Hello and welcome or welcome back to Language Culture and Dr. Lou. And today I'd like to talk to you about the question of, is English really the official language of the United States? Because people have been asking me about this lately. And in short, I might say yes and no. But also I would say not really, not legally, not really necessarily. And one thing that surprises a lot of people is that until 2025, until this year, um, and still as of today, the US has never passed a law making English its official language on a federal level. That's just kind of interesting to me because it's been nearly 2.5 centuries and we still haven't declared one or more than one official languages for the US as a whole. Now, the truth is we have 30 states who have recognized English as an official language. So in each of those states, yes, English is indeed legally the official language. But the thing is, among those 30 states, there are several of them that recognize other languages. And for instance, Hawaii, it comes to mind as a state with two official languages, both English and Hawaiian, both official languages there. And we also have states like Alaska and South Dakota that have English recognized as an official language, but also recognize indigenous languages as co-official languages. And of course, we also have Louisiana, where they too recognize English as the official language, but French has a special status, meaning it could be used more in schools, for instance, than in other states where English is the sole official language. So we've got, again, 30 states, but if you take away Hawaii, Alaska, South Dakota, and Louisiana, because the English is not the only official language they recognize, that takes us all the way down to only 26 states that recognize English as the sole official language. And so that's not a lot compared to, there's 50 states altogether. And it's also true that of um, the American territories, of the US territories, all five of them have recognized English as an official language. But again, not necessarily the only one. For example, in Puerto Rico, they do recognize English as an official language. But of course, Spanish is also an official language there. So we have, yeah, lots of states where English is recognized as an official language, but not always as the only one. And plus, we have dozens of states that don't have an official language. Now, bring it all the way to the federal level. And a lot of people are feeling like now English is officially and legally the official language of the US because on March 1st of this year, 2025, of course, um, President Trump made an executive order 14224, where that order designates English as the official language of the United States. Now, that's true to a certain extent that it's the official language of the United States, but the fact is that it's only an executive order, which means that Congress has not passed any law recognizing English as the official language of the US. So it's not legally binding for all federal activities as well as state activities. And local municipalities and all that. It does not carry all the way down to everybody in the US or to all locations in the US. Now, Trump did make the executive order declaring English as an official language of the US, which since then, the US government's website also states English is the official language of the United States. And they go on to say it was designated as the official language in an executive order on March 1st of 2025. Now, again, still, Congress has not passed any bills, meaning it has never made them law or federal statute that English is the official language. Now, what does that mean exactly? And what limitations are there on the executive order? Again, like I said, executive orders are it's a reach by the executive branch, especially well, the president in specific, to make it a policy, but that does not necessarily make it law, make it fully legal, because the executive order it's written by President Trump in the executive branch, but it doesn't carry the same weight as law because an executive order can it's only a policy, so it can be reversed or even changed a little bit by any future president who comes in. And you might know this how a lot of presidents on their first week in office make a lot of executive orders undoing what the previous president had done, especially when we switch parties, when the president is elected from a different party. And another thing about being an executive order, it's because it's an order, it's not law, it's not a federal statute. That means it cannot override existing laws that we already have. For example, there are laws prohibiting discrimination on the basis of national origin or native language, and this executive order cannot undo that. It doesn't force everybody to be all English only because it doesn't have the force of law because Congress has never made it a law. And we also have, like I mentioned, 30 states declaring English as an official language, but no federal statute exists, not yet anyway, as of the recording of this video. And so, what does that mean in practice? Um, well, the federal government, at least under the current Trump administration, treats English as the official language for federal purposes. But because the order states that it does not require agencies to stop producing materials in other languages, and because other language access laws remain, and that executive order cannot override those. So the practical effect of this executive order is really more symbolic. Um, and it's also subject to agency discretion, like the various agencies of the executive branch. And because no law has been passed, like I said, another president could come in and just rescind that executive order or modify it to change it a little bit. So we still, as of today, and I'm recording this video, of course, in October of 2025, despite the executive order that came in March, we still have no legal official language because Congress has still never passed a law. Now, the fact is, a lot of bills have been proposed in Congress, brought to it to make English the official language, but not a single one has ever passed. Excuse me. Sorry, I was trying not to cough. And so again, since Congress, the legislators have not made this into law, then I would say English is not really the official language of the US, at least not federally. And it's more like a suggestion. And so if we think about what could make English the official language of the United States, it would be, again, a bill that goes through the House of Representatives and gets passed there and then passed in the Senate. Then it becomes law or federal statute. And so, like I said, it was March 1st, 2025, that President Trump signed this executive order suggesting that English be the official language of the US. And it's more symbolic than anything else because, well, the executive branch of the government is treating it as official language. That doesn't make it law. That doesn't make it apply everywhere. And like I said, there are already other laws protecting minority languages on the books, and an executive order cannot override those laws. And so, like I said, March 1st was when the executive order was written. And then March 3rd, just 2 days later, in the House of Representatives, somebody did create a bill. They did introduce a bill. It's titled Designation of English as the Official Language of the United States Act of 2025. And so it was introduced in the House on March 3rd uh, from a Republican from Alabama. And the bill's summary states that it establishes English as the official language of the US, but this bill has not been passed. And I looked at what actions have gone on in the bill, and it's only been 3 actions. First, it was introduced on March 3rd. And then also on March 3rd, it was referred to a couple of committees, and there it stays in the committees. And it hasn't even come to a vote in the House of Representatives yet. So, is English the official language of the United States? Not yet. Not really. Not yet. And it's also, yeah, worth mentioning, like I said before, that in some states, um, we have other languages being recognized in an official capacity as well. So that's up to the states. And now, talking about that bill again, the one that's in Congress right now, um, key provisions of that bill would include the official functions of government. We need to use English, including federal, state, and District of Columbia. So all those would be conducted in English if this bill passes. Right now, the executive order does not have the authority, does not have the power to force all the states to also conduct all their official business in English, especially not the 20 states who never declared it an official language, right? And exceptions to this bill, if it becomes law, um, exceptions to requiring everybody to use English for all official purposes in government at the state, federal, and municipality level. Um, the first exception would be for documents and actions for public health and safety. Those don't have to be all and only done in English. And another exception in this bill, even if it does pass, documents and actions protecting the rights of victims or defendants do not all have to be conducted in English. And then third, requirements under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act also get around the English must be used. And so one other thing that this bill would do, which would make English pretty darn official, is for naturalization purposes. Like this bill, it would establish a framework for implementing and enforcing that the that testing English language ability would be part of the naturalization process. So for people to become citizens, they would need to prove they have enough ability in English to become citizens. But that's not even the case right now. So again, is English really our official language? Not yet. Not really. Not in all states anyway. And so, again, this bill in its current status, like I said, it was introduced on March 3rd and then immediately referred to committees. And specifically, it's in the House Education and Workforce Committee. It's also in the House Judiciary Committee. So it's still in committee. It hasn't passed the House of Representatives and certainly hasn't even made it to the Senate yet. So it's not law yet. And so because it hasn't become a law, it remains a legislative proposal rather than binding federal statute. So we have the executive order, which is pretty much a suggestion. And then we have a bill that hasn't passed anywhere. So no, English not really official language, not yet, anyway. So if enacted, if this bill were enacted, then it would create a statutory, aka legislative requirement, making English the official language of the US rather than just relying on an executive order alone. And as of now, only the executive order declares English as the official language, not any laws. So this order may carry a little weight in how executive agencies operate, but it's not the same as a law passed by Congress. And so the fact that the legislative proposal remains pending, that means that any long term or hard change, especially for state governments, courts, and future administrations, all depends on congressional action. English cannot be the official language unless the legislators make it that by law in Congress. And yeah, so that's pretty much the long and the short of it, how we don't really have an official language in English yet, but kind of. So it's kind of a yes or no. I mean, a yes and no, rather. And so I would say that mostly I would lean towards no. English is not the official language of the US. Not yet, because again, in the past, over the last couple of centuries, we have left it up to states' rights issue. Like each state can decide what its official language is. And a slight majority of the states have done so, but not so huge. We still have a good 20 states that don't have English as their official language. And this executive order alone does not make it so, does not make the states comply with that either. And like I mentioned, we also have 5 US territories. And even though all of them have started recognizing English as the official language, it's not always the only one, right? Again, the example of in Puerto Rico, Spanish is very much an official language here. And uh, I think this ties in a little bit to a lot of conservative Americans had a really bad reaction to the idea that Bad Bunny will be headlining the halftime show at the Super Bowl. And I do think a little bit of that is, xenophobia for one, because not all Americans really recognize that Puerto Rico is indeed part of the United States of America, although it's not a state. Puerto Rican citizens are definitely American citizens. So there's that part. And it's also people thinking that, oh, English must be the official language of the US. It's definitely the language of America. That really ignores how complicated the linguistic diversity situation is in the US. So, anyway, just to wrap this up a little bit, I would like to, yeah, say that if I'm asked the question, is English really the legal official language of the United States? My answer would be no, not yet. Regardless of what the US government website says, it's not really law yet. And so uh, it's not in effect. So we still don't have an official language. Now, we could very soon, if this bill that's in two committees in Congress right now in the House of Representatives, if that comes to a vote and they vote yes, then it goes to the Senate and they vote yes as well. Then the US would have English as an official language. But until then, we don't really, because again, an executive order alone does not make it law. And it certainly cannot override other laws we have protecting minority languages as well. So yeah, and oh, by the way, I mentioned Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl halftime show. Very soon, I'm going to put out a video on that and why so many people are rejecting the idea of Bad Bunny hosting the Super Bowl halftime show. And honestly, I do think it's part xenophobia and it's part linguistic insecurity. A lot of because Bad Bunny, a lot of it, well, most of his music is in Spanish. And so people are feeling a little insecure, like, why should they have to watch that halftime show and listen to that music in Spanish if they can't really understand it? So anyway, I do want to tie together yeah, the linguistics in play with people rejecting Bad Bunny as the Super Bowl halftime headliner. But that's for another video. And so thank you so much for listening to me go on and on about English as an official language or not in the US. And I promise I will tie this together with many Americans' reaction to Bad Bunny hosting the Super Bowl halftime show or headline it rather. And yeah, so until then, catch you around next time. Bye bye.